This is Sarah Milligan with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program, and I am talking with Peggy McBeath at the not Grand Avenue anymore. We're at the First United Methodist. When I grew up, it was Grand Avenue. First United Methodist Church in McAlester, Oklahoma. Today's date is July 23rd, 2015. This interview is a part of the Cowboy in Every County Oral History project that is in conjunction with the 125th anniversary of Oklahoma State University. And we're just going to talk today about Peggy's experience at OSU and her life in general. So, let's start. Just tell me a little bit about yourself. Just where you were born, where you grew up, a little bit about your parents, that sort of stuff.
I'm born and raised Okie. Have lived nowhere but Oklahoma. I was born in Tulsa, grew up in Claremore, graduated from Claremore High, then went to Oklahoma State, was there for 4 years. My husband was still in school, so we stayed. And so I was there an additional 10 years after that, working for the food service department on OSU's campus. And then moved to McAlester in '84, January of '84, and have been here ever since. Grew up in a family with 4 children. I have an older brother, an older sister, and a younger sister. 2 parents that emphasized education to the nth degree. Neither one of them had a college degree, but both of them had college hours, just had not been able to complete the college degree. So their goal was to have all 4 of their children have college degrees, and we do. All 4 of the children do, and 3 of the 4 in-laws have college degrees. So when my littlest sister graduated from college, Mother took a picture of all 4 of us kids with our diplomas and put it in the Claremore newspaper so that everybody could see her kids had gotten their college education.
That's great. So, what did your parents do then for a living?
My father was a carpenter by trade, and that is all he did until he couldn't hold a hammer any longer, which was a very long time. He grew up on a farm, and his father was a carpenter, his grandfather was a carpenter, and that gets you back to Germany. And so when they immigrated to Oklahoma, or to Ohio actually, they took the name Carpenter. So I'm a Carpenter is my maiden name. And my mother was, she started out as a secretary and ended up being a building manager in downtown Tulsa, and that's where she retired from.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize about the carpenter connection too. That is interesting. So, when were your parents born then?
My father was born in 1921, my mother in 1926.
Okay.
My dad, bless his heart, he was the 5th of 6 boys in his family. And when World War II came about, his older brother was already married and had his own farm, so he was there. All of the other boys signed up for some military service. And Daddy wouldn't leave his mother because she was still on a farm, the family farm. And so Daddy stayed with her, and Grandma actually sold the farm to move into town in Mount Gilead, Ohio, so that Daddy could join the Air Force. And so he joined the Air Force, but because he would have been the 4th son in the service, he didn't go overseas. And so he was a trainer in America, and actually met my mother because it was a stopover place from Tulsa to Fort Hobbs, New Mexico. And he met her at a USO dance, and yeah. And that's how it goes from there.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a pretty common story from that generation of the USO dance.
I think so too.
That's a nice.
And my mother loved to dance, and my father did not. But But he did dance with me at my wedding, so.
Oh, that's a good concession, right?
Yes, it is.
That's nice. So what brought them to Oklahoma then?
My mother was born and raised in Oklahoma. Well, kind of half in Oklahoma and half in not. Claremore was the home where her mother's family were in the Oklahoma Land Run, and they built homes in Claremore. And I, even as a child, remember going to my great-grandparents' home in the home that they had built there in Claremore. And so when Mom and Dad got married, they moved back to Ohio so Daddy could work on the farm again and start his carpentry trade. And after my brother was born, Mother said, no, we've got to go back to Oklahoma. So they came back to Oklahoma to be with her family, and we all stayed.
Yeah. So all of your siblings are still?
All of us, we're all in Oklahoma. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's
Yes.
pretty great. So I guess let's talk a little bit about your transition to get to OSU. What made you decide to go to OSU?
When I was 12, I joined Rainbow Girls in Claremore. And it was really a big thing back then because there were no girls' sports. And I'm very athletic, you know that. Mm-hmm. There was nothing for me to do but either be on the pom squad or in the band. Well, I didn't want to be in the band unless I could play the drum, and they wouldn't let me play the drums, so I was in the pom squad. And then got really busy into Rainbow Girls, and we had our state conclaves in Stillwater. And so from the time I was about 14 on, I would go to Stillwater, to OSU's campus. We'd live in the dorms. We would eat the dorm foods. We would have big meals, banquets in the ballroom. The Gallagher, now Gallagher Iba Arena, but then was just Gallagher Hall. They would lay down the mats on the floor, and that's where we had all of our big meetings and so forth. And I did that until I was about 21. So it was well past me going to school. I was still in Rainbow and very active in Rainbow. So that's what drew me to the campus. I just fell in love with the campus. I fell in love with the size. Claremore at the time was a very small town, and I didn't like being in a small town. I left Claremore in 1973 and never went back except to visit my parents, you know. So that's what got me to Stillwater.
To Stillwater. So what did you end up majoring in?
I have a math education degree, fabulous degree, a fabulous math department. My mother told me when I was in the 9th grade that I needed to be a math teacher when I grew up.
What made her say that?
I was that good at math. And when I was a senior in high school, the junior high principal actually would call me out of school and have me come to the junior high and substitute teach in the algebra classes as a senior in high school. Yes, it was awesome. And it wasn't counted in absence because he took me out of school to get me over there to teach the algebra classes.
Did they pay you?
No, no, but the experience was phenomenal.
Yeah.
But when I graduated from college, I was unable to find a job around Stillwater. And like I said, my husband was still in school, so we needed to stay in that area. So I didn't actually get to start teaching until 1993. So 20 years later, I finally get to start teaching, and so I've been teaching for 22 years now.
Let's talk a little bit. Do you remember much about your classes and the program in general, and sort of maybe some of your instructors at all while you were at OSU? And I realized that
my advisor was Dr. I can't say it now. Started with an A. But I had him, he was my advisor from freshman year until I graduated, and he was incredible. He was the head of our student teaching class, which there were only 6 of us, and we had 3 instructors. It was awesome. That was the fall of 1973. most of the people did their student teaching in the spring. It didn't make any difference when I did it, and so he said, well, why don't you do it in the fall? Because I have so many in the spring, I can't place them all. Mm-hmm. So I did my student teaching in the spring and actually got to do it right there in Stillwater under Mrs. Key. I did the trigonometry and calculus, mm-hmm. which was absolutely phenomenal because you're talking about the brightest kids in the high school. But I went to Dr. Kelly's, I can't remember, Dr. Achel, that was his name.
Achilles, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I went to him and I said, I love my experience. It was absolutely terrific. But I am not going to be able to teach trigonometry and calculus because at the time you had to have a master's to teach those, and I wasn't getting a master's degree. I didn't have the funds to do that. And I said, so I really don't feel I'm all that prepared. And he said, you'll be fine. So he was very supportive too. Dr. Kotlarski was the only math teacher that I did not like, did not respect. Mm-hmm. To this day, anybody you mention that name to and they go, oh my gosh, yes, he was horrible. All of the rest of them, I don't remember their names this many years later,
right.
But they were above and beyond helpful. I think a lot of the things that I do now when I'm teaching are because of the experience that I had with those teachers, mm-hmm. because it was nothing for them just to sit down in the desk next to you and work with you. And that's what I do with my students because they were so free and so encouraging. It's made it easier for me to encourage the student. And of course, I teach the students that are remediating in college. They don't like math. And so I'm trying to, I told them I cannot make you love math, but I can at least make you like it a little bit. And that's my goal. And usually I succeed. But it's because they were so patient with me. And I was so hungry. I had 42 hours of mathematics when I graduated. Almost all of my elective hours were in math. So I have all of the math that was offered pretty much at OSU at the time for a bachelor's degree because I couldn't get enough. I just loved it that much, and the teachers were that terrific. And of course, by the time you get to your second semester, junior year, and your senior year, you're down to small classes in a mathematics department, and it was almost one-on-one attention pretty much, but it was super. I remember one time my senior year, a young man, he maybe was 5 years older than I, was teaching us fundamentals of calculus, theory of calculus. You weren't just given the calculus formulas, you were proving those calculus formulas. So over spring break, he gave us 10 questions that we needed to bring back after spring break, solved, if at all possible. So I went back to Claremore, and I looked up some of my high school teachers from there, and they were both teaching at the junior college in Claremore. We spent easily 2 to 3 hours every single day that spring break working on that paper. Mm-hmm. And when I got back to school, I had 9 of them solved. The only other person close to me was 2. So, but it was fascinating, and it was just, I think they really saw that I was hungry for mathematics, and they just kept pushing more at me and pushing me, and I still love mathematics.
Do you think there was ever a time when you thought about going into mathematics instead of teaching mathematics?
No, not ever. I've always wanted to be, my mother always wanted to be a teacher. And I think it came from that, but also from my experience in high school. I've always loved to work with children, which you know that too. Mm-hmm. The only thing I considered was business for a little while, business accounting. Mm-hmm. And I got into the business, and I have a minor in business. I didn't like it. I didn't want to sit there and just crunch numbers. I wanted to teach. So I'm living my dream right now.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, we may come back to a little bit of that and when we get back to sort of your teaching career, but let's go back to sort of your more social life at OSU. What were some of the things that you did for fun and extracurricular groups and anything like that?
I finally got into intramural sports. I got to play football. I got to play volleyball, handball, squash, basketball, baseball, track. I got there and swimming. I took golf. I did anything and everything I could that was athletic. If they wanted somebody to sign up for a team, a sports team, I signed up for it. I went to every athletic event that there was, anything and everything. As far as joining clubs, I didn't. I lived in East Bennett or West Bennett, and I was just on the intramural teams and just having fun, finally getting to be an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what was your favorite sport to watch? Did you have one?
To watch?
Mm-hmm.
Wrestling.
Was it?
My senior year in high school, Claremore started the wrestling program. So for the first several matches, they gave us the rules and explained the takedowns and all of that sort of stuff. And then I go to Oklahoma State, which are nationally ranked wrestlers. Yeah, I even got to see the national wrestling competitions. It was still is very definitely my favorite sport to watch.
Nice. Nice. What was your favorite intramural sport to be a part of?
Flag football.
Really?
Yes.
Were there many girls that did flag football?
No, you had to have 3 on the team. And because it was co-ed, you had to have 3 on the team. And I was one of the 3, and I never came off the field because everybody else rotated, but I didn't because I could still outrun the boys. And I had a young man that was interested in me, and he tackled me and got a 15-yard penalty for tackling me. And I didn't let him live that one down either. So
good for you.
I loved it. But then I went into softball, and when I stayed in Stillwater, I got into the co-ed team through the Methodist Church and played softball and volleyball through the church. So even when I moved down here, that we had a co-ed team, and I played softball about 15 years, until about 89 or 90, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Still love it.
Still, I do remember. I remember the softball from here. For some reason, in the back of my mind, I remember that going on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so what were some of the? Let me think how to go from there. Because you met your husband while you were in Stillwater, right?
Right.
Was that did you meet him doing intramural sports? We're not going to talk much about it, but did you meet him doing intramural sports?
He lived in East Bennett, and I was in West Bennett. And he actually was a good friend of a gentleman that I was dating. Mm-hmm. And he introduced us, and he needed help with his calculus, and I tutored him with calculus, and yeah. It went
through math. Amazing.
Through math, yes, it was through math.
Good. Okay, so when did you graduate?
1974.
So 1974.
May 11th, 1974. Richard M. Nixon delivered our graduation speech.
No way.
Yes way. He flew into a helicopter in the parking lot across from the football stadium. It was where the patio apartments were. I can't remember what building is there now. I think it's the big AstroTurf practice area right in there. Mm-hmm. That's where his helicopter landed, and we were in the stadium, and there were 4,000 of us graduating, and we were sitting on the grass. It was grass at that time, not AstroTurf. We were sitting on the turf, and he walked in, delivered our speech, and then left.
So you remember seeing the helicopter come in?
Yes. Oh yes.
Do you
it was
remember?
Pretty awesome.
Do you remember what you were thinking about, or how you felt about him delivering the speech, the graduation speech at the time?
just like today, I was in awe that the President of the United States was coming to my graduation. I didn't care about the other 399 or 3,999. I cared he was coming to my graduation. And of course the next year he resigned and all that sort of stuff. But Watergate had just really gotten started at the time. But I was in awe. I'm still in awe. You know, I don't care what people say about him, he was still the President of the United States. And he took out his time to come to Oklahoma State University.
That's pretty amazing. I'm wondering how they got him to do that.
I don't know, but I loved it. No, don't ask me what he said. I don't remember. I was in too much awe, I think. Too much going on. I got married the next week, so.
Did you really?
Yes.
Then you did have a lot going on. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that. That's really interesting. So let's talk a little bit about what you did after you graduated and staying in Stillwater for another 10 years, right?
Right.
Yeah, so let's talk about your...
My junior year, one of the gentlemen that I had met through Rainbow was the director of the food service. And I told him I needed a part-time job, and he got me a part-time job. So my junior year and all of my senior year, I worked part-time for the food service. Well, then when I couldn't find a teaching job handy, I went back to him and I said, do you have a full-time job? Mm-hmm. And within 3 years, I was promoted to assistant to the vice director, doing all of the accounting, the warehouse, the meat supply, the bakery, basically all of the physical things out in the big warehouse area, and all of the counting and all that kind of stuff. I was second in command for all of that. It was incredible, absolutely a wonderful job. Wonderful job.
So did that suit more with your business minor then? Did you feel prepared to do that?
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Blair took me under his wing and he taught me how to read the futures market, you know, so that I knew when to purchase the meat and all of the different products to go into the warehouse and when to cut back. And he really trained me well. I loved that job. It was great. I got to travel across the nation to other universities to check out their food services. And,
That's pretty neat.
Oh, it was wonderful. I really cried when I left. Didn't want to leave. I wasn't ready to leave, but, you know, I hadn't been teaching yet either, so.
Did you feel like that, well, let me ask, did you know that you were going to be there that long after you graduated and after you got married? Did you know you would be in Stillwater for that length of time? No,
we had no idea. Scott was a pre-optometry major, and he had goals of going either to Houston or Chicago, and we actually traveled both places to get into optometry school. And he just looked at me one day and he said, I'm tired of school. And he became a golf pro. And so we stayed in Stillwater. They hired him as an assistant pro out at Lakeside. And he worked out there until he got the head pro job here at McAlester, and that's what brought us to McAlester.
That's what made you move. Yeah, so when I'm just thinking about the teacher aspect. So were you disappointed that you didn't get to go into teaching earlier?
Very.
Even though you
if
really
it hadn't been if I hadn't had such a great job, I probably would have tried harder. But I got into that job and just, you know, they kept promoting me and moving me around and feeding me, you know, and encouraging me. I kind of didn't think about the teaching aspect of it for a while. But once I got down here and I had my daughter and was sitting at home, that's when I started missing teaching a lot and wanted to get back. So I had to take one semester of classes in Ada, and they had one math course that I had not taken. And Brian Masters told me, he says, that's a horrible class, Peggy, you'll hate that class. I loved that class. It was another theory class.
Oh.
And I loved it. I ate it up. But the funny thing is to get my teaching certificate back again, if I went back to OSU, they needed 14 hours. And at Ada, they only needed the 9 hours. Well, actually 12 hours. Mm-hmm. So I went over there to enroll. They wanted me to take college algebra. Well, you know, college algebra is your entry math level. I'd clept out of it, but they didn't have it on my transcript. They immediately put me into trigonometry at Oklahoma State. So Ada was now saying, no, you have to have college algebra. So I went ahead and signed up for the college algebra class and this other math class, and I went over to Dr. Hobbs, who became my advisor at the time. And I was a day late, and so I went in, introduced myself, and I told him, I said, I know I'm a day late, I've missed one class, could you give me the syllabus and so forth? And he asked for my transcript. I don't know why. So I gave him my transcript, and he looked at me and he laughed, and he said, would you like to teach the class? And I laughed, and I said, well, honestly, I thought it would be an easy A. And he said, yeah, too easy an A. And he signed off so I didn't have to teach college algebra or take college algebra. And the funny thing is that's now what I'm teaching. So
that is, it's interesting. I think he would have figured it out really quickly, even if he hadn't looked at your transcript.
Possibly.
So let's talk about your move to McAlester. What did you think about when Scott said, I got a job in McAlester, this is where we're going? Because it's not exactly big. It may be bigger than Claremore, but not by too much probably.
Well, at the time, you came in out of West McAlester, and the old dilapidated hospital was there, and all kinds of houses falling down, and the prison on the other side. I looked at him and I said, oh, no, you're not. I am not moving to this ghetto place. And he said, just wait, let me show you. And then we get to the south side where the country club is and all that. If it hadn't been for the church, I probably would have not been very happy. But the house that he had rented was across the street on Tennessee from the parsonage. And the minister at the time was my little sister's in-laws. And so they took me under their wings, and Stephanie was born here, so I was 7 months pregnant when we moved here. And they took me under their wings and brought me into the church, and the church is what really got me going. They loved me at the country club, and I got a really good group of ladies that I played golf with. And when Stephanie was old enough to leave her with a babysitter, then we even traveled around southeast Oklahoma playing golf, and it was fun. I got to teach the junior golfers. You know, I was teaching them the etiquette, not the golf swing and so forth, but I would play golf with the junior golfers and go out on the course and teach them, no, you don't step in front of this person. No, this is out of bounds, so here are the rules, this kind of thing. And so I really got into that. So when I first came, no, I was very, very reluctant, but I'm glad I stayed. It's been a great experience for me, and Stephanie has moved back here, and so it's been a good experience for us all the way around.
Hey, Sadie. Speaking of Stephanie, this is Stephanie's daughter.
Yes. Yes.
So, just for timeline clarity, what year was Stephanie born?
84.
So 1984. And what year did you start teaching?
I started teaching in the fall of 93.
Okay. So in between 84 is when you went to Ada, and at some point in there you went to Ada and sort of finished up your life.
I stayed home with Stephanie for 2 full years, and there were a couple of years that I kept the boys in the summer. I had your brother and Kevin Bishop and the 2 Flugel boys, so I had 4 boys and my little girl, and started working at the church, started getting back into teaching, through the Christian education part, and and that's what drove me to say, it's time to go back to teaching. I really, really love what I'm doing, and
yeah.
So
where did you start teaching then? At what level were you teaching?
I started in 7th grade.
Mm-hmm. So was that at Peterborough?
Yes. When Dr. Smith hired me, she said the only position I have is in the 7th grade, or I think it was a junior in high school. And she said, I'm not sure which one would fit you better. And I said, please give me the 7th graders. And she looked at me like I had completely lost my marbles. And one of the teachers for Christmas that year handed me a jar of marbles. And he said, I know you've lost your marbles, so here's some to replace them. So within a year, I was teaching the 7th and 8th grade. And by the time I was there for 15 years, and by the time I was at the end of those 15 years, I was head of the math department, teaching the honors classes in both 7th and 8th grade. And then I went on to the high school because I've always, my favorite math is geometry. And there was a geometry job that came open. And so I took it and went to geometry and taught there for another 3 years. And honestly, the principal was leaving, and the education in the public education is getting so difficult in the state of Oklahoma that a teaching position at Eastern Oklahoma State College came open, and I applied and was hired there. And so I've been there for the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to come back to several points in that. The first is why did you like 7th grade teaching? Because people think you're crazy for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult age.
7th and 8th grade is where I was the honoriest, and I thought, there's nothing they can pull that I haven't done. It's also the transition from arithmetic to algebra. And I did not have a good transition teacher in high school, obviously, since I was going back and teaching it in high school. I wanted to make that transition better. And so my goal was to come up with games. And I did a lot of research. I went to a lot of workshops, and I had a game that we could do, a mathematics game every other week for the entire school year that transitioned them from arithmetic on into algebra. And I have a lot of students that have come back and told me, that was the smoothest transition they had. So I loved it, the kids loved it, the parents loved it. I had parent volunteers come in just because I was talking so much about, or the kids were talking about what we were doing. They would come in, and I had no trouble getting volunteers to, I had a big probability fair, and I invited all of the students from Peterborough to come to that. Well, I had 12 students from the high school, from the learning service class, that came over and ran the probability games. But I had anywhere from 6 to 10 parents that would come in and make sure, kind of crowd control and giving out the prizes and that kind of thing. It was never any problem to get volunteers to come in and work with them. So that's where I wanted to be. I loved it. Like I said, I wanted to always teach geometry. With my father being a carpenter, we used geometry all the time. And once a month in geometry, we would build something. And a lot of the kids still have their icosahedron hanging on their Christmas trees that they built in my geometry class. So, it was just, I was getting older, but it was the math that I'd always wanted to teach. Mm-hmm. So that's the reason I jumped on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, so let's talk a little bit about how the politics around teaching changed over that time period, because I know that you said that the big reason why you chose to leave the public high school, was because it was just getting harder to teach in Oklahoma. So maybe let's just talk a little bit about some of the things that you felt that were restraining or that sort of drove that.
Do I get to use a name?
I don't care. You can do whatever you want.
Governor Frank Keating did the absolute most damage to public education in Oklahoma. I mean, he really, I'm sorry, I don't have much nice to say about that governor.
You don't have to.
And he was there for 8 years, unfortunately, so there was a lot of damage done.
What were some of the things that were enacted during his time that you think did the most damage?
He was trying to push the private schools, the charter schools, and so forth. So he was cutting funding to public education. And he was requiring more testing. And in the testing, he was putting the blame for the failure on the teachers. And if you couldn't make your students all succeed, then you lost your job. And I mean, it was pretty bad. It was pretty substantial chopping block there for a while. He never took into effect southeastern Oklahoma. Like President Obama now has recognized southeast Oklahoma as one of the 5 promise areas, the original first five promise areas, because of the low economic, the low education down here in this corner of the state. And I'm sorry, but Oklahoma City doesn't consider that. We have great representatives and senators from here that just absolutely preach and preach and preach. They're very definitely for education, but, you know, there's only so much 1 or 2 voices can say, or 3 or 4, whatever. There's not a whole lot when you've got all of these other people saying, it's the teacher's fault. Well, it's not the quality of the teachers. Mm-hmm. You know, most of the teachers that I have worked with in these 24 years have been outstanding teachers, best in their field, fantastic morals. You know, they're fabulous people. But when you don't have students that are interested, you know, McAlester is a meth capital of the world. And you're dealing with drugs, you're dealing with guns and knives, you don't have much of a chance. So when I first started, I guess it was about 3 or 4 years into my teaching career, we started working on the past objectives. And I got into that program first and helped write the past objectives. And what we were trying to do was connect them to make them fluid from kindergarten all the way through the high school, the 12th grade, and make sure that all of the objectives were covered. Well, then the state legislature came down and they gave us something like 37 objectives that had to be mastered in 1 grade. You can't do that. You know, there's no possible way to do that. It was like the people that were setting down all of the rules and making all of the decisions had no clue about education. And we teachers are in there doing our level best, doing everything we possibly can. I even, before the PASS test for Algebra 1 in the 8th grade, we had a huge breakfast. I had them come in early. We sat down. They had their calculators in hand. We were working problems, but they had sausage and biscuits and gravy and oranges. I handed peppermints to all of my students right before they took their test, trying just to make sure that they were awake, that they were ready, engaged. And a lot of my kids didn't have, you know, it was the first time they'd ever had that kind of a breakfast for whatever reason, you know. Mm-hmm. But the politicians are just clueless. And if they would just had come and watched us teach, even to this day, I mean, they're still struggling. When Clinton put in No Child Left Behind, well, you know, that's a wonderful thing to do, but when they're left behind in the kindergarten, because they're still not able to read for whatever reason, you can't leave an 18-year-old down there. You can't. When I had an 8-year-old in my 7th grade class, I went to my principal and I said, we can't do this. You can't put this 18-year-old who's in, you know, he's 18 for a reason. You can't put him in with my 7th grade students. He's a, you know, it's not a good influence. Even though he never said anything derogatory or violently or anything like that, or out of pocket, but it shouldn't happen. And they didn't leave him there long. They moved him up to Key Academy, but those are the kinds of things that teachers face day to day. And these politicians they don't get it. And Frank Keating was the worst of all.
How have things changed, if they have, since he's been out of office?
Not a whole lot. Sandy Garrett was a great school superintendent, state superintendent, but she kept banging her head up against every wall that was around there and so forth and so on. And Mary Fallon, I can't really say a whole lot because I've been out of the public education, but I don't see it improving. I talk to my friends that are still in the public education, and the testing, we go from one program to the next program to the next program to the next program, and nothing's ever really resolving. Whatever governor is in the House at the time says we need to do this educational program, you've got to do all of this training and so forth and so on, and it lasts for 4 or 5 years or until that governor is no longer governor, and then there's a whole new program. So it's a constant retraining and relearning, which, teachers have to have 75 hours in 5 years to keep their teaching certificate. And that is more than met the 75 hours when you're doing that kind of training. But, to have to keep constantly shifting gears and changing everything, it's hurting the process of just getting down to the basics of teaching a child how to add 10 plus 10. 7 times 8. A lot of my college students still have trouble with that. Well, in college, I can't teach arithmetic. I'm working on algebra. I'm working on getting them to, so I hand them a calculator. Unfortunately, elementary teachers have done the same thing too many times. So I'm really encouraged that they are departmentalizing as far down as the elementary schools so that a person who loves math is actually teaching the math. A person who loves English is actually teaching the English. Mm-hmm. And I think that's been a big stride forward. Big stride. Mm-hmm. So,
what are some of the other things that in your mind would be solutions to some of the issues? Have you given it much thought? If you could fix the education system, what would some of the things be?
To fix the education system. Oh my gosh, Sarah.
I know that's a big thing.
That is. I don't think that broad scan.
If there were things that you could have identified when you were still in public school that would have made your job easier.
If they had left me alone to teach the students the way that I was trained to teach the students, and still tested them at the end of the school year, the grades would have been higher or as high as me teaching the test. If they would just let us do our thing. I had a science teacher who loved his science classes, but a lot of the things that he did, a lot of the things that I did, we couldn't match with an objective. But it gave the kids such a great foundation that they weren't just floundering, they were enjoying the classes. But if we couldn't match them with an objective, then we weren't allowed to teach them, even though they were essential, just for a foundation. Mm-hmm. And so the kids leave our class with rocky foundations. The teachers need to be left alone and do what they've been taught to do, what they love to do. And 90% of the teachers out there today love what they're doing. We have to. We're not paid enough. You're not paid enough to just sit there and do something that you don't like. Mm-hmm. You have to love teaching in order to stay in teaching in Oklahoma.
How does that, how does the salary issue for teachers in Oklahoma reflect sort of the teachers that we've done teachers in training? I know, for example, sort of my class of people that I know that went into teaching, a lot of them went to Texas because the salary's higher. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see that has sort of been an impact in Oklahoma as far as?
Very definitely. Of the 6 people that were in my student teaching class, there's only me that's still teaching. The other 5 have gone into engineering or computers or something like that. They got out of the teaching field very quickly.
That's hard. Have you done a lot of? Have you mentored a lot of students in training?
No, I have not.
I bet you would be really good at that.
Oh, thank you. No, I've never had that privilege of having a student teacher.
I know this has come up since you've left the public school, but I wonder if you've thought much about the whole Common Core discussion as it's been going on.
Common Core actually started just as I was leaving the high school, and I still have the Common Core app on my phone. When I sat down and really analyzed, the Common Core objectives were not any different than the past objectives that we had been working on. So as far as I was concerned, Oklahoma, McAlester was already a step up on the nation, that we already had those objectives in place. They might have been called something else, but they were the same objectives. So I felt like Oklahoma, as far as that was concerned, there's nothing wrong with those.
Mm-hmm. What did you think when Oklahoma government decided that they weren't going to adopt it and were going to redo? That is where we're at, right, in the conversation. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. My own personal opinion, the textbook companies that supply the books, that then give perks around, we're going to lose a lot of money if we went to Common Core, because we were going to have to change all of our testing, the books, everything. And I feel like the textbook companies are who pushed Oklahoma more away from it than towards it. We already had it all in place. Like I said, our objectives were so similar to the Common Core. It would have been an easy switch over, but yeah.
That's interesting.
That's my opinion. That's my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, I definitely. There's no reason why I would think you're wrong. It's been interesting to watch that conversation. So, when you took the job at Eastern, how have things changed in your teaching objectives, I guess? Going from geometry to...
We don't have as many games.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I still try to come up with something that's more lighthearted, but the students that I have are just wanting to get out of that math class, and their skills are not wonderful. So most of the time I'm spinning my wheels, getting them to get their foundation under their feet, so that then I can add to it the algebra and keep them going. Now my college algebra students are kind of 50-50. You know, you have to have college algebra for about 60-70% of the degrees that you want out of the college. And so it's one of those things, I have to have college algebra. What can you do to get me through? So instead of spending the time as a general class, I work more one-on-one with the students. I spend a lot more time walking around and sitting down next to the students or looking over their papers and that kind of thing. So it's become more of a big essential for these people. And so my office hours here in McAlester in particular, like tonight, I'm giving finals tonight. I open my office door at 4 o'clock. there will be 3 to 4 students standing outside my door when I get there at 4 o'clock. And I have moved extra chairs into my office because at one time I had 7 or 8 students in there that I was going from, just around my desk working with them. That's what they want. They want the personal attention because they're all in different places. And so I may lecture, but then the bulk of the class is spent working one-on-one or two-on-one, something like that.
Mm-hmm. It seems like it's a little bit full circle to some of the things you appreciated at OSU.
Coming right back.
Mm-hmm. So where do your students come from at Eastern? Are they mainly from this region, or are they from?
They had been, but since we have added soccer this last year,
It's fine.
honey, you've got to go back out there. I'll be back.
You're doing good, Sadie.
I had a student from New Zealand, and I had a student from England, a student from Scotland, and since I had been to Scotland, he and I just chatted constantly about Scotland. The basketball players come as far away as Wisconsin and Florida, and I have won over the hearts of the coaches that they put their players in my classes because I work with them better, and like the first semester I was over there, the basketball team went to the National Junior College Tournament, and they missed a week and a half of school. And so when they got back, I actually stayed in Wilburton and worked with them, the boys from the basketball team, to get them caught up so they could be successful in their class. So a lot of the students are from this area. This last year I had a young man from Texas that came up to Texas because even paying the out-of-state tuition, it was cheaper to come to Eastern than to go to Texas. And he had 2 friends on the baseball team, so he just came up here to be with them and pay for his first year of college, and now they're all back in Texas. But it's not surprising just to hear where they're coming from. It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, and it is. I forget about this because the main campus is in Wilburton, which
Right.
is pretty small and pretty rural.
Oh, very small, very rural.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I forget that even sports draws a lot of people from all over the world for part of
Yes.
it, to come for that aspect of it too. So you teach at the Wilburton and the McAlester campus then?
Yes. I teach during the day in Wilburton and at night here on the McAlester campus.
How many classes do you tend to teach? What's your load?
This fall I'll have 8 classes.
My goodness, that's a lot.
That's what everybody says. I love it. It's still, I feel like I'm semi-retired, so it's not nearly the load that I had at the high school and then teaching adjunct at night.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I'm semi-retired.
Do you see a lot of, still a lot of McAlester High School students over in your college classes now?
Yes, I do. And a lot of them, like this summer, I've had several of them that I had way back when they were in high school or even 8th grade. And now they're married with children and they're going back to school. And so here they're in my class again, and it's been awesome, reliving all of that. And it's been fun.
That is neat.
Rarely does a teacher get to see the child grown. And this is awesome to me, but I get to actually see them grown up and what they're doing for a living. Mm-hmm.
Yep, I'm one of those students.
Yes, you are.
Well, let's talk about that. Is there anything else you want to touch on from the educational perspective or from the math field in general, or do you feel like we covered it pretty well?
I think you've done really well with that.
Well, let's talk about a little bit sort of the community, come back to the McAlester community a little bit, and maybe specifically, I know that you do a lot with the church here, and you have other things going on besides what you're teaching. So maybe just talk a little bit sort of about all the other things you have your fingers in, or things that you're interested in, or?
Well, I play bunco. That's the night out. Stephanie and I are in a bunco group, and it started out teachers from Pewterball, and we've been together for, I think it's almost 9 years now. And so we've all diversified. Many of them have retired. We have other schools represented. Stephanie, coming in. We do that once a month. I'm a member of Kappa Kappa Iota, which is a teacher sorority. I've been president of that group, and now I'm secretary, but it's just a great group of ladies that we get together, and we talk about the education concerns because we're all teachers. Some of them are retired, like I've moved on to the college, but we're still very concerned about the education. I'm a member of PEO, which is a philanthropic educational organization. So education is very primary in almost everything that I do, whether it's here or not. And this summer I've had the very distinct privilege of being grandma to that little girl that just came in. And she's my buddy. We play in the rain together, and we finished swimming lessons today, and so that's what I'm getting to do. And I'm working with her at home like I did her mother, with her reading and her writing. We go to the library once a week and do all kinds of things like that. So the rest of it's just family and friends that we do dinners and just fun things with. The 4th of July we had, I went out to another teacher's house, and I think there were 45 of us there. And we just had a wonderful social time. But she and I are connected through the church and through the school. So that's how we got started with that friendship. So,
do you go to many OSU events or still have connections with OSU?
I was a member of the foundation. I wasn't able to pay my dues yet. I'm going to next month. Stephanie and her family and I try to go back at least twice a year to a football game or a wrestling match. Her husband likes the baseball, so we've even gone back for a weekend where we had baseball and wrestling. So I still have friends. One of my best friends is still in Stillwater, and I try to get back to see her. She doesn't travel as well as I do, so I try to go back there, and I just love the town. It's just a great town. So yes, we try to go back when we can, but it's not very often. My nephew was Pistol Pete from 2002 to 2004, something around in there. And so I made a lot of appearances in Stillwater through that time. And he and I are the only OSU graduates here in our family anywhere. And so we have a really big bond. And he now is the camp director at Camp Egan. And so I go over there, and we still have a really good OSU bond. And
what's his name?
Josh Pulver. He was a 6'5" Pistol Pete, and then they put that head on him. He was fantastic, and he loved that job. And he never thought of it as a job. It was a privilege to him, and he still works with the Pistol Pete Association, and all that kind of thing. So,
where did your siblings go to school? To college?
My brother started out at TU and graduated from the University of Central Oklahoma. Both of my sisters graduated from OCU. That was one of the funny stories I was going to tell you. When I was a junior, my older sister was a senior, my brother was a senior, and my little sister was a freshman. And we all started school the same time. So Sally had her own car, the senior, and we loaded up her car, and she and I were in her car, followed by Mama and Bonnie, my little sister, in the family car, followed by my dad in his pickup truck with all of our stuff, and we caravanned, because at the time you didn't have cars like that. And we caravanned, and we went to Stillwater first and dropped me off with all of my belongings, and then they headed on down the road to OCU to drop off all of Sally and Bonnie's. Mike was already married and living in Oklahoma City, so we didn't have to do anything with him, but I still very vividly remember Daddy planning it out. He had a rod across the back of the pickup truck to where we could hang our clothes, but these were Peggy's, these were Sally's, these were Bonnie's, and Peggy's things had to go to the back of the truck because she's getting off first, and that kind of thing. It was awesome.
I can really visualize that too.
Yeah, we looked like the grapes of wrath. Oh, yeah.
Did they come to campus to see you very often?
Bonnie did. She did the first couple of years when she was still at home in high school. She would come to a football game. But again, you have to realize, I would go to Stillwater and wouldn't go home until Thanksgiving because I didn't have a way. I didn't have a car. If I could hitch a ride somewhere, yes. But for Bonnie to just drive over and spend a weekend with me, it was not easily done. But she came once in a while. Sally, no. Sally was so big into her school, and when she graduated, she immediately went into teaching. So they didn't really, but they both had also grown up on OSU through the Rainbow Girls. Mm-hmm. So
that was one thing, the Rainbow Girls was out. So when you moved to McAlester, did you know this is where the Rainbow Girls headquarters is, like national headquarters?
Oh, yes. I got into the state officers for Rainbow Girls and traveled around the state, and everybody knew the home of McAlester. Yes.
Have you been involved with them at all since you've lived here?
No, I haven't. I stayed with the girls in Stillwater. I was their mother advisor for several years right after I graduated from college, and then I moved away from it. And once I got here, I had a baby, and brand new business that we were trying to set up, and just never really got into it. So,
which I think is also normal with organizations like that. When you progress and then you usually move away. It's just interesting that you were in it for so long, and then you're here in the home, in the headquarters.
Yes,
I like that. Well, I think that's the bulk of what I had in my head to kind of ask you about. Are there other things that you wanted to talk about, or anything else you wanted to make sure gets on record?
You said I could leave something for my grandchildren.
Yeah.
So for Sadie and Gideon, going to college was not just my mother and father's dream, it was my dream. It was my way to get out of the small town, and then I end up in another small town. But education is your way to get anything that you want, to follow your dreams. Don't chase them, you catch them. And going to OSU was a dream of mine. I loved every minute there, all the time I was in school, all of the years that I stayed after school. It was just, I look back on it as some of the sweetest memories that I have. And to be able to learn from people who had the same passion for mathematics that I had was something that you don't just get every day. So I hope that you two little ones love life enough to follow your dreams, but to realize that education is your way to get there. And I love you all. I love your mom and dad. And I love you, Sarah. Thank you so much for every bit of this.
Oh, thank you, Peggy. I think that's wonderful advice for not just your grandkids. All right, we'll stop there.